Good morning and welcome to Designed for Organization. My name is Tia Hunsberger and I'm a senior designer at Closet Factory, Colorado. And Kelly with Organized by Kelly here in Littleton, Denver, Colorado area is going to be jumping on and joining me today. So we're going to talk today about something that I fondly call after it prized possessions. We often end up with things in our lives and our worlds. Good morning, Kelly. Welcome.
Good morning, Tia. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Me too.
So we're going to talk about prized possessions. So oftentimes in our lives and in our worlds, things come into our possessions that we want to like, we think we should like because someone that we loved gave them to us, passed them on to us. And we think there's some value, whether it be emotional or financial, with these items, but we don't necessarily know if we love them or not. Let's talk today about, we've talked about this. This has come up a number of times in our past conversations. And so we decided we're going to have a whole show today on kind of what to do. So let's start out with kind of, and this is a conversation that I often have with clients. Tell me about, Kelly, when somebody says, I have this thing or I have this stuff and I'm not really sure about it. Kind of, how do you start that conversation with a client?
Sure. I think it can come in several different quantities. A lot of times we'll get a phone call and someone just moved and maybe their parent recently passed and they've inherited all the things from the parent plus their own things, and they just are overwhelmed in a sea of stuff. And so that process is going to look a little different than myself, for example, where I have things from grandparents and other people that have passed down and I've acquired over time, and reevaluating those singular items as opposed to a large amount, right? So there's a little difference in all of that. And I think I love the title that you gave for the session today about prized possessions, because I think it's important to note that because Aunt Margaret prized this possession doesn't obligate me to prize that possession. And I think we get a little stuck in wanting to remember and honor these people that have meant so much to us. And yet things aren't necessarily the way to remember and honor them all the time. But it can be hard to figure out, okay, then how do I remember and honor this person without holding the things from them?
For sure. And we're gonna talk more and more about that as we jump in today. But let's talk first about, like, okay, we get the stuff and sometimes we get things and we love it and we're so excited about it. And other times we kind of look at it like what do I do with this, right? So let's talk about first that decision of, like, do I love it or do I not? If we love it, then we just need to find a good, it's pet day today. It's okay. If you can't see it right here, but this is Jack's ear right here, and you've got a friendly barker in the background. It's all good. It's pet day. We're going to celebrate our pets.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if I can celebrate mine, but thanks for the encouragement.
It's all good. So let's say we get something and we're so excited, we love it. Obviously, if it's like a piece of art or something we just hang on the wall, that's a pretty easy thing to find a place for in our home. But let's say we got married, we have a set of china, and grandma passes away, and now we have another set of china. We love it, and when we're so excited to use grandma's set of china that we were given, that we used as a kid for every holiday, how do we store it? What do we do with it?
Well, I think it depends. For everyone, it's going to be different. And it depends if you have the space for it. Like, can you add a buffet because you have a place for that and you can easily store that china and you love that china? It brings you great memories to use it. Super, have it. But china's one we come across regularly.
Right.
And I would say women in their 60s and 70s tend to have a lot of china that they are worried their kids won't want, but don't want to tell them they don't want. And they don't know what to do with it. And it's a tough one because there was a time that china had a lot of value in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of circles. And I think it goes back to when you're getting organized to just get really present. And for some people, that china is still part of their present and
Right.
something that they're going to use. Me personally, I'm never going to set a table with china and I don't have a place to store it. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I have to find something else to do with it. It's a really hard one because you don't want to just take it to ARC or something where it might just get broken and trashed. Consignment stores, it depends. Everything always depends, right? But it depends on the china. Sometimes they'll take parts or full sets, but they are overloaded with it right now. And so it does get really difficult to determine the best placement for it. Sometimes placing it on Facebook Marketplace or somewhere like that can be an option because someone may have the interest, but there's not going to be a lot of monetary value in it
Right.
typically.
Right. And that does at least give us the good feeling that someone sourced it out, they found it, they were excited to come and get it from us, so we can at least feel like it's going to a good home, even if there isn't a dollar amount with it. Kelly, what do you think about this? And I'm sure somebody's going to watch this video and like lose their mind when I ask this, but oftentimes we get a big collection. There's like 20 place settings and all the serving pieces and the teacups and the saucers and all the things. What do you think about breaking that collection up? Because maybe we don't want the 20 pieces of the place settings, but maybe we want to keep a couple of the serving dishes, or maybe we loved having tea with our grandmother. So maybe we want to keep just 6 of the teacups and the saucers. What do you think about breaking a collection or something of that sort down into just some pieces that are special to us?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's the best idea because when you think of defining clutter, clutter are those items that no longer have relevance in your life. And so if you feel burdened by this large collection, whatever it may be, but there are a few pieces that still spark joy, they still really bring you some satisfaction, then great. Keep those few pieces because the next person doesn't have the emotional tie and it's on them. If they want to go source those pieces to complete a collection, great. But that's not really our culture right now.
Right.
So someone might be able to enjoy for what it is, that piece, and they may never even realize that those pieces are missing, but you still have them and they're relevant to you, so they're not clutter. So I think it's really important to just break that hole down and see what you can keep. I know that I don't usually bring like models or props or anything, but
Yes.
I did today.
Yeah.
Because for me, my grandma, her that I called Granner, she was like my world, like just everything to me. And her passing was really difficult for me. I think I've brought it up before, even about her pillow. And so she had very nice things. I think a lot of times the things that have come down, they're not IKEA or current level manufacturing, so they did get passed down more than a lot of the things we might buy now, unless you go really high end. And so I, for the first time ever, went to a furniture store and purchased furniture last week with my husband.
Okay.
Because I do have so many things passed down from grandparents, parents, all around me that I've been able to collect and curate in a way that wasn't clutter, and I've loved it. But the couches that my mom gave me, they've gone by the wayside, and it was time. But it was funny to realize like this was my first experience to actually go purchase furniture at a furniture store because I've
It's
never
it's a
had the
very
need.
adult thing to do, isn't it?
I feel so adulting right now. So, but one thing that I was reminded of in all of that is after my grandma passed, those things that each of us acquired from her, for a while, I couldn't let any of them go. I couldn't let a fork go. I couldn't let anything because I was so worried about not honoring her, losing the memory, losing those pieces. And so, one thing I did that really was a game changer for me is I sat down and I made a really strategic, thoughtful list of those memories that I just had to hold on to, those pieces of her that I just had to have. And then I created a shadow box with some of those items so that it was a collection for me of those pieces of her. And after that, an end table or some other random piece, it was a lot easier to let go of because I know that I have in my possession those most important memories that I can't let go of. So I brought that to show today.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So here it is. I don't
Oh.
know if you can see it very well with the reflection, but like her perfume that she wore, her scent is
Oh.
represented. She always said my name was spelled Love, so I have a little charm that says that. Here's a picture of her. Let's see if I can. We used to go arrowhead hunting. She had quite a collection, so I put a few. The Lord's Prayer was really important with her. So I just have these little, she was a big card player. These just little things, some sand from our walks and where we spent time. After I made this little collection that I keep, I really think it was freeing. And I recommend to clients all the time, you don't have to make an artsy shadow box. That doesn't matter. Just some way that you can set a boundary and create a collection in some way of the things and the memories to honor that person. I think then it's easier to make a decision about a candlestick or a sofa or whatever it might be, because you're not letting go of that person when you let go of that thing.
And that's, I mean, that shadow box is beautiful and has a ton of awesome memories in it, and it's in a very manageable manner and space, right? So that can move with you wherever you go, from room to room, from house to house, wherever life takes you, without having, I mean, how many times do people move with these big pieces of furniture and all of the things? We actually enjoy it and use it, but we have my husband's childhood dining room set. So the dining room table, chairs, and a buffet. And we enjoy it and use it, but it also dictates that we live in a house that fits that dining room set, right? So like it's not an easy decision if we're moving to a new home. Like we can't just like pick a house with a small dining room set. We either have to make a decision that we're not keeping this dining room set, or we have to find a house with a big dining room. So we love it and it works for us and it doesn't feel like clutter. It's a useful piece of furniture for us, but there's definitely some emotion around it for sure.
For sure. And that's one of those things that it always comes back to getting present. There may come a point when you would want to move and you couldn't take it with you, but that's a decision for that time.
Right.
For right now, you don't have to worry about it. It's great in your space and it works, so enjoy it. I think the other important thing to remember about these items is the intent. Like these people that living or past that give us items, do they give you an item because they want to burden you with it and trap you into only having a certain size or style house. Like, no, that I don't believe is ever a loving intent or an intent that people would have. They give things or pass things down hoping to be useful and resourceful for you, but if it comes to a day where it's not, that's okay too. And just really embracing that piece of it.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about, collections and things that come into our lives, I think obviously we get to make a choice what we do with it and how we do it. I've had some lovely experiences in my, design career where I've got to help people create space to really honor something that was important to them. I built this big set of bookshelves for a client that weren't actually for books, but they were a set of bookshelves for a gentleman who had his dad's. It was like CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays and just a whole collection of different types of media. And we built a big bookshelf for him to be able to store all those things in a nice organized manner. And he was so excited. They'd been stored away in boxes for years and he couldn't access things and didn't know where things were. And then we gave him a space. It was just a wall in the dining room, but we built this nice set of bookshelves and he was able to then use it to really honor something. He was really excited about it. So that was a fun project for me.
I love that. When I took the tour at Closet Factory, I had that thought because I love how you can add lighting to the shelving. And so maybe it's a basketball that's signed or,
Right.
something that you love and you really do want to honor. And instead of leaving it in a corner basket on the side, really getting present and specific about what you want to do with it. Adding a light and a little case on a shelf changes that piece completely
Right.
from being what is kind of a piece of clutter to something really valued, and it shows that it's valued. It's fun to show off. And so really looking for those ways, like how can the shelving, how can the lighting, how can these pieces really fit these items so that they can be displayed and enjoyed.
For sure, for sure. I think you talk about that. I mean, I can design and build a beautiful space for whatever someone needs. And that's the beauty of what I get to do is I get to go in and, a lot of times you've had the conversation of, okay, what are we keeping? What are we packing away? What's getting displayed? And then I get to design a beautiful, wall display, cabinetry, some exposed items, maybe some enclosed storage for people as well that have things that they want to have access to, but it's not something that they want to have out on display. I think glassware can sometimes fall into that category. I have a client who her dad used to own a bar, so she has all this glassware and she loves it and she loves to throw parties and use it. But if she keeps it all out in a display manner, then it's going to get dusty and dirty. You have to wash it every time you use it. But if we put it in some enclosed cabinetry, then it's protected and ready to be used at any time. So,
and I love the lighting you guys have because anytime you're doing the glassware, when you can add lighting to the crystal, to the glassware, oh my gosh, game changer. It's beautiful. So,
well, yeah, and it makes something that is in some cases would feel like clutter, right? Then it makes it really this artistic, beautiful highlight of the room, which can be such a nice benefit for people. So I wanted to ask you a question, Kelly, about, and I'll share a personal story about reinventing some of those prized possessions that we get. So years and years ago, when I was young and single and needed furniture, I got a desk given to me that belonged to my great grandma, and it was it was that kind of 1980s really red cherry wood, and it was not, it was a nice piece of furniture, but it was not my personal
sure.
color or style at the time. And I had hauled it around and it had worked well in many places kind of over the years. Eventually I took paint to it and I did this refinish. And now it is my husband and I's, like, it's one of our favorite pieces of furniture in our house. So I wanted to bring that up from a sense of like, sometimes we get something that is meant for one purpose or one use, but we can reinvent something into a different purpose or a different use and really make that, it kind of gives it a new life. Any thoughts on kind of helping people reinvent things?
Um, I don't want to be like a broken record, but I think it goes back to that intent and getting present again. And so that's exactly what you did. And in for your present right now, you love the piece because you were able to do that. And so I think that's a sustainable way from an environmental standpoint,
For sure.
as well as a way to honor that person and save that item, because you can't go just buy that at Bassett or wherever you might go to get a piece of furniture right now, because it does have that sentimental added value to you. So I think anytime you can take a piece and just update it and make it your own. And I know there's always a hesitation with wood items, like, oh, but do you paint it, etc. At the end of the day, I've done it and I've undone it, and it's not fun, but it's doable, right? It's a project. And so I say go for it. Go
Yeah.
for it.
For us at work, everybody's different, right? And that's the beauty of, like, when I work with clients and I'm designing, we talked a lot about bookshelves today because that's often a good place for storage of items. But when I'm designing, we can get as simple or as elaborate with colors. And I literally, and Kelly, you've seen this and experienced this, I literally can do a stained color match. So if someone, let's say they have a beautiful antique desk that they love, we can do either a complementary or a stain match to try to incorporate some piece of furniture, a desk, a dining room table, something of that sort, into, kind of expanding that
Absolutely.
aisle for them. So
Absolutely. That's a great option because then it looks current and
yeah,
present.
yeah,
And then it's more fun. It looks intentional. And anytime you can bring those things together to look and feel intentional, you're going to enjoy them more.
yeah. So before we wrap up today, Kelly, let's talk about back to that statement of prized possessions. So give us some permission, I will say, to choose what is prized and what isn't. Like, what's your thought process? And I know you're going to say being present, but walking through some of those steps. Like, if we just aren't sure, how do we get there?
So I think one thing you can do when you're just not sure, like you ask yourself the questions and like, is I know that the whole Marie Kondo and you touch something and does it spark joy? But there is a little something to that because when you see and touch something, is it feeling like a weight to you? Is it a burden? Or are you like, oh, I have this feeling attached to it? So I think that's a really important, valid first step. And then where do you go after you determine that? So, okay, maybe you touch it and you're like, oh, it brings me joy, but it's like a burden. I don't have the place for it. I don't have whatever. If it's a smaller item, I think you can do kind of like you do with kids' toys. And you can just box those items, put a date on the box, and revisit it. You don't have to make the decision today, but you do want to get your current space very present. But it's okay to store away some things for later decisions. One thing about all of these prized possessions, and when we get into emotional belongings, we don't touch those from Thanksgiving until after Christmas, before, like November till after Christmas, because the holidays, emotions are just too high
Yeah.
at that time. So there's always the whole timing piece to add to it. So postponing some decision making, not a bad idea. So when you're on the fence, don't feel the pressure that you have to decide this minute. Now, if it's a huge buffet and the dining room table and those kind of things, you might be in a different spot where you do need to decide sooner than later, but there's always storage units. Um,
I feel
you
like
don't
that.
want to regret later what the choice you made. And if you're really that much on the fence, I think give yourself some time, but set a date or else it just accumulates.
Yeah, I love that because I think oftentimes when we feel like, oh, we have to make this decision, we have to make this decision, I think that when we don't make the decision now, we feel like we're procrastinating. But I love the idea of like, okay, I'm not ready to make this decision today, but I'm going to put this on my calendar for 6 months from now when I'm in a different season of life. And I'm, especially, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but especially when it's like a family member loss, right? We've got all these other emotions going on right now. Let's just set this off to the side until I deal with some of these other emotions. And it's not, I love the fact that you're not presenting it like it's procrastination. It's like a planned future decision, which I think makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You have to be kind to yourself and give all the grace during those moments because even this little sweet box I was showing you, it
Yes.
was 15 years until I made the actual box. It wasn't like months later, you
Right.
know? Um, and it was very freeing once I did it, but I don't even know if I could have done it before I was actually ready. So, yeah, I think timing is just really important and all the grace you can give and all you can do to make your current space really present and save those off to the side for later so they don't impact your daily routines and your daily life because that doesn't feel good either.
Yeah, and I think, before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about like oftentimes these things come into our lives when we do lose a family member or a family member goes through some type of uh, traumatic or very significant life-changing moment where they have to move or they have to make some life changes. And so there is a lot of emotion around it other than postponing some emotional decisions. You said a few minutes ago, Kelly, that you as a team, this is my interpretation of what you said, as a team, you guys don't do emotional related projects during this last quarter. Did I
Pretty
understand?
much.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that piece of it. Other than those tips, anything else that you recommend when we're dealing with, if we lose a parent and we now have a home that we need to, vacate, to sell, to put on the market, or whatever that might be, what are your suggestions on kind of how we navigate that?
I think step one is to go through and find all of those items that are the most precious to you and be sure that kind of like this box, like they're saved off to the side. Because if you just dive in and you start in the kitchen item by item, you're going
Right,
to feel like you have to keep all the things.
right.
So I think just doing that first sweep and then maybe having other people that were close do the same. And then I think it frees you up to make the next decisions about where things should go, if it's an estate sale, we work with a company called Sell Buddy and they'll come pick everything up, sell it online and cut you a check. Like there's different options out
Yeah,
there, right? Um, but when we're going through something like that, I think it's really hard to have a trusted outside person
mm-hmm.
there and to do the decision making in small chunks. Like you don't want to have a 6 hour decision making session about an emotional topic. It's just too much for
Right,
anyone.
right.
And so typically when we do that kind of thing, it's often one-on-one, 3 hour sessions, a week or more in between, because you just need that recovery time between, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes, in the situation of like, let's say we lost a family member and you talk about having some of these activities and events, with someone that we don't know. I do think, it can be a great time to like invite a close friend in to say, hey, I just need an unbiased person to listen through this, and I trust you, and I want your input with, and you love me and you love my family member, but you're not as emotional about it. So I think sometimes just having a partner, a friend that we can ask to come in and help us can be beneficial.
Definitely. And I think sometimes it can be hard to find a friend that has enough time to
True.
go through
True.
for long periods. Um, One of our main organizers that does a lot of this, Dawn, it's emotional for her because she'll have oftentimes widows or different people and they're ready, but it's still emotional and there's
Right.
still a lot of tears and she cries with them. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they become very, very close through the process. But just having that outside person there to just hold your hand, walk you through, and reduce the number of decisions as best as possible, I think it's really important. Another thing we get a lot of calls for is people that don't want to leave this to their kids to have to go through later.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more and more a thing because I think the generations of kids have less and less time and they've already accumulated so many things. It becomes, I heard that there's a new Netflix show, I think it's Netflix, coming out about Swedish death cleaning.
Okay.
And the whole idea is, women in their 60s, 70s with a lifetime of, or people in their 60s and 70s, but it's often women, with a lifetime of accumulated items. And they do go through and pare this all down so that even if, they have 20 years left or whatever, they don't know. And they don't want to burden the next generation with all the decisions and all the items. So it's gaining steam and becoming a more popular thing. I've heard about it for a long time, and it's just an interesting phenomenon because we know in this country we have more items than we have time. We have more stuff than we have bandwidth to deal with all of it. And that is just creating more opportunity for what do you do with all of these things because
For
there's no
sure.
time.
For sure. I'm going to backtrack a minute to where I talked about having a friend. Like, you're right. We all have a lot on our plate, and that friend may not be able to sort through everything in the home, but maybe that friend can sit in on an hour meeting to help, this, help us when we're in that situation, find a partner like you, like Dawn on your team, to really then be that resource and really be like a trusted partner working through the process together. So
I love that you say that because oftentimes when there is a death in the family or a spouse or something, it is the friend that calls us to come in and help that person because it's, they come and they think they're going to help.
yeah.
But it's more than they can really handle. And we do it all the time. And you don't want to get into that emotional situation with a friend. You don't want to tell your friend, oh, that's, let that go. And 6 months later, they're like, hey, you told me to let that thing go and I wasn't ready to let that thing go. You don't want to get into that.
Yes. Have we ever talked about when my husband encouraged me to sell my Cabbage Patch doll at a garage sale? I'm still mad about that.
See, there you go. There you go.
I just want to say one more thing before we wrap up today, and I'll say this to kids, and I'll consider myself a kid in this conversation. I think as our parents are deciding kind of what to do, you talked about that. I think I'm going to just encourage people, if there's something that you want, something that you love in your parents' or your grandparents' house, tell them that you want it and you love it. And then when they are ready, you will, well, maybe there's 12 grandchildren, they've all asked for something. But, if there's a vase that you love, ask for that, because then grandma can pass it on and be super proud. And then you're super excited to get something.
Then you have a little more control over what's
yeah.
coming your way. I love that. I totally agree. And yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And it doesn't have to be like when you die, but it can be like you know, when you don't want this anymore, I would love to have it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Kelly, anything else to add before we wrap up today?
Um, I don't think so. I think it all goes back to the same thing about holding on to the memories without holding on to all the things. And so looking for ways to honor that and do that in the way that
I love
works
that.
best for you in your life.
Oh, I love that. Kelly, it's been a pleasure to connect with you again today. And for those of you who are watching this live or watching this in a replay, if you have a subject that you would like Kelly and I to talk about in the future, please send us a message and we will add it to our agenda for
Absolutely.
upcoming shows that we do. And we'll be back next month with another topic and another show. Guys, have
Awesome.
a great week.
You too. Thanks, Tia.